Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing Dreddybajs Legacy Qualifier winning mono-red deck. Now, mono-red decks have been a staple of the format for quite some time. This one departs slightly from some of the ones that you may have seen. So 3 copies of the One Ring is not unheard of, but it's an innovation that more and more people have been taking up lately, while still keeping the deck as basically a 3-drop deck. So what our deck is trying to do here is use things like Ancient Tomb and City of Traitors alongside Simian Spirit Guide and Chrome Mox to power out really powerful turn 3 plays, or 3-mana plays, as early as turn 1. So we have the beatdown aspect in the form of Rabblemaster and Broadside Bombardiers. The Feather the Mirror Breaker is like a nice draw smoothing card that can also just run away with the game, given enough time, because you can then copy some stuff and get a load of good value on it. Just a great card. Then we have the Blood Moon, which can just completely shut down some decks. Some decks just cannot function under a Blood Moon, especially if it comes down turn 1. So we're aiming to lock them out with that. We've also got 4 unlicensed Hearths because there's so much graveyard hate required for today's meta. Because reanimated decks are very much the thing to beat, and probably should have caught a ban in the last update. But alas, we are still living in Greece world. So this list has got 4 unlicensed Hearths to hate on those graveyard decks, and then 4 Chalice of the Void, which can hate on a lot of cantripy decks, as a general rule. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to be playing either one of these on turn 1, or one of these on turn 1. And those are the hands we're keeping. Sometimes we can even go further and play like a One Ring on turn 1 and just gas back up. To supplement all this, we've got some removal in the form of Fury, which can also beat down and be a win condition, and is very nice with Fable the Mirror Breaker, because we can copy it. Outside of that, we've got a Sokenzan, which can create some creatures. Even if we've got a Blood Moon down, this is still going to be what it is in our hands. We can make some creatures with it. It doesn't come up very often, but it's a nice tool to have. We've got a couple of Den of the Bugbear as well. And then the Shatterskull Smashing, so mostly things going under Chrome Mox, but sometimes we have them as removal too. Just a really nice flexible card. And that's pretty much the deck. There is a spicy one of Gemstone Caverns, which can help us accelerate out if we're on the draw, if this is on our opener. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Broadside Bombardiers provides some excellent board control, turns redundant Chrome Moxes into removal spells, gives us the ability to sometimes evoke a Fury in the second main phase, and then throw at our opponent and just dome them for a bunch. And this also lets us throw our One Ring away if it's going to be dealing us too much damage. So quite a lot of gas to follow up our ways of shutting the game down and just stopping our opponent from playing. Sideboard-wise, got some more graveyard-hating Canoptek Scarab Swarm. This is more for the fair graveyard decks that are just kind of increasingly generating value from their stuff in their graveyard. You know, whether that's going to be getting Delirium or delving it for Murktide Regents, perhaps having a lot of lands in the graveyard for things like Knight of the Reliquary, that sort of jam. So this is going to be for those fairer decks rather than the unfair ones. Speaking of unfair ones, we've got 4 Leyline in the Void for those unfair graveyard decks. You know, things like Beseech the Mirror into Gaia's Will sort of decks. We've got 2 Mindbreak Traps also for some of the unfair matchups. We've got a few little Pyroblasts to push through against some blue stuff. We've got a Sweeper in Brotherhood's End, which can pick up artifacts or creatures and can do a decent amount of work there. And then we've got 4 Dead Gons, which can blow up anything from Merit Lage tokens to just sniping out a Delver or whatever if we feel that's what is needed. So that's the deck list. Now, on the face of it, the mono-red sort of stompy / prison decks look relatively simple, but there's actually a lot of nuance here because every decision you make is enormous because you don't necessarily make that many decisions in it, so that each decision is weighted a lot more heavily than if you're playing like a cantrip deck where you can kind of just sort of smooth things out. So what you mulligan and the order in which you sequence your things is quite key. And I'm going to try and do my best to showcase that. Hopefully in a positive way rather than a negative way, but let's just jump right in. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get blood mooning, people. Alright, this is our opening hand. It does some things, but our opponent is a known dredge specialist, so I think maybe we're going to try and look for one of those unlicensed hearses. Like this hand, you know, we can do a turn 1 Fable, but I think we can, knowing the matchup, we can probably do something a little bit scarier. This doesn't feel that useful, although Fury can do some work in this matchup because it swipes bridges, and Rabblemaster can just start churning, but this is a turn 2 play. I think we can do better. Alright, this one seems like what I would describe as better, so we can keep this. We want to keep an Ancient Tomb so we can play a turn 1 Unlicensed Hearse. We want to keep these so we can do all this. So 2 of these cards have got to go. Are we keeping the land? Are we keeping the Chalice? We're keeping the Fury. I think we're going to bin off the Fury and the Den. So do we need we can just keep the Den here and play that as our second land rather than the Mountain. That's also fine. Now, if our opponent isn't playing Dredge, then that could be awkward. But this is very good against a lot of the meta right now. But I don't think I've seen our opponent play anything but Dredge for quite some time. Maybe once in all the times I've seen them playing online. Our lines are Diamond. Not giving us anything to try and snipe out there. We could just play another Hearse. Or we could just play with Rabblemaster and get a threat going. I think we'll get a threat going this turn. Our opponent's only got 4 cards, so it's relatively likely that our Unlicensed Hearse can stop them from doing huge amounts of things. And then next turn we can just play another Hearse, and then our opponent's just going to have a miserable time. Which is kind of what we want when we're playing the mono-red sort of stompy / prison deck. We're all about inducing that misery in our opponent. There is a Mana Confluence, a Hardcast Narcomoeba. Right, we have nothing to feed on with our Unlicensed Hearse. What do we have here? A City of Traitors. We could play this and enable and play both of these at the same time. I think we're going to go to combat first, though. We'll attack with the squad. They can chump block and soak damage here, or they can strip out one of our tokens. Up to them. Right, they're going to go for neither of those plays. So I think we're going to play a Chalice for 1. That stops all the lootings and things. We'll play this City of Traitors. And this can dump an Unlicensed Hearse into play as well. I feel like the bad guy here. This looks like a Breakthrough by X's 1, perhaps. Satoru the Infiltrator. Okay, this is just a creature they can play. They can save this Narcomoeba this turn because it can soak potentially more damage. Another Chalice. Is that what I want here? Not particularly. If we attack with this, they'll just trade off with the Satoru. So I think we'll just attack with the 1/1s. We're going to force 2 damage or 1 damage and trade off the Narcomoeba. I think we can put this on 2 now, and that's probably fine. I think we can just win with this Rabblemaster. We can also begin to eat our opponent's graveyard. Now they actually have something in their graveyard. The thing about Dredge creatures is, unless they're doing their thing, all their creatures are pretty bad. It's the synergy that makes the deck tick. A Simian Spirit Guide. We can make 2 1/1s here. I'm not really worried about what our opponent's doing. So only forcing 1 damage through is acceptable to me. Next turn we can play the Simian Spirit Guide if we so wish. Sorry, attack with the Simian Spirit Guide. So we can force through 4 damage next turn and clear the Satoru, because I have to block the Rabblemaster. Shatterskull Smashing. We don't have the second red for this. If we play it, it does blow up our city, which isn't really essential right now. So we can force through quite a bit of damage this turn if we want to. They could block the Simian Spirit Guide here and still be alive, but I think they're just going to go for the trade here. We put them to 3 with Chalice on 1, Chalice on 2, and 2 Unlicensed Hearse against a Dredge deck. I don't believe our opponent has any way back into this game, but if they do, it's probably going to involve cracking that Lion's Eye Diamond. Alright, so we got the game 1. Now it gets even worse for our opponent because we get to board in 4 Leyline of the Void, which is very hard for them to beat. I don't really think this is a matchup about the One Ring either, so I think we can probably bin that off. The Blood Moon is pretty good here still. We can shut off decent amounts of their things, but it's not the be-all and end-all. We could broaden things like Pyroblasts, but I think we're better off with just, you know, this sort of graveyard hit we got going on here. Which of these do I want to get rid of? It's probably going to be just one of the Blood Moons. It's acceptable to me. The other option is the Chrome Mox, but I think we just want to keep our mana source count high so we can be guaranteed to have an Unlicensed Hearse on turn 1 or a Leyline. This does not do anything. We would need another mana and get anywhere, and it would have to be a soul land for us to do anything on turn 1, and we do need to do a meaningful play on turn 1. Or turn 0. So what does this hand do? No, we got a load of graveyard hate. Let's just... Alright, we're just going to go in again. We do have some graveyard hate here. So we can keep this. This is this makes the Hearse. And then 3 of these cards have got to go. Gemstone Caverns is a little bit awkward. I think we need 2 Furies. This is kind of an awkward follow-up for us. Maybe we do have to keep this, but we don't cheat it into play. And that means we get rid of the Fury and the Fable. Just try and cast more of our spells. I'm not going to do the Gemstone Caverns there. An Ancient Tomb. Alright, I will take that and play this Hearse. Our opponent hasn't seen the Leyline, so if there is a game through, we might be able to get them with that as well. But a format where people are having to run 4 unlicensed Hearse in their mono-red decks tells you that something may be a little bit awry in Legacy right now. A Rabblemaster, you say. I will play this, pay 3 life. Oh, not that one, this one. I will just do the exact same thing we did last game. It was good then, it should hopefully be good now. Our opponent will have more chances to interact with this now they're going to have some sideboard cards. I wouldn't be surprised to see something that blows up our unlicensed Hearse. Whether that's going to be like Serenity or just a Chain of Vapor so they can have one big turn. Could even be something like an Ingot Chewer. There's a lot of options out there. Bombardiers. Let's play this. Attacks. Little creatures. Make my Rabblemaster rather large indeed. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then it's lethal next turn. They're going to Chain of Vapor our unlicensed Hearse. They're going to have a real bad time in a sec. Yeah, we just had very, very potent main deck hate cards. And our opponent isn't the reason why we have these unlicensed Hearses. This is for like all the Rescaminator decks. And unfortunately our opponent is just getting the raw end of the stick there, where people are hating another deck. So a softer graveyard deck like this ends up getting really punished. Yep, feel bad about that one. But we won. Let's go to round 2. Alright, we've won the die roll. So we can put a Blood Moon into play on turn 1. That's the sort of thing we want to be doing. I'm going to attempt that. Now, the downside here is if we use our Simian Spirit Guide and we don't draw another red source. Because of that, does that mean we're supposed to fire off this Simian Spirit Guide to make a Fable? So this is where someone who plays this deck a lot more would know the metrics. Because this can give us some treasures. But Blood Moon could just win the game on the spot. I'm going to attempt to win the game on the spot. And believe in the fact that we have a whole bunch of red sources. Like most of our deck is mana. So Chrome Mox is, a bunch of our lands, another Simian Spirit Guide. There's lots of ways that we can play a red spell next turn. Brainstorm, pitching Force of Will. Okay. So we traded 2 for 2 there because we used the Spirit Guide. We do need to find that red source now. If our opponent wasteland us, that could be a bit of a pain unless we immediately draw a mountain. Right. A tropical island. Are we on the control spectrum? Are we on the tempo spectrum? Hard to say. They shuffled their library off of that ponder. Love to draw a red source here. We did not draw the red source we wanted. Okay, we'll play another Ancient Tomb and pass. So if we'd have played out the Fable Mirror Breaker, we would have been in the same spot we are with that Blood Moon. Because we would have used our only red source. But this means if we have something like a Spirit Guide as our second follow-up, we can still play the Fable and try and get out ahead of it and get some treasures going. But we do need to find something. Okay, so this is the sort of something we've been looking for. Let's play this Chrome Mox. This would be a heads-up Force of Will target. Okay, so we're going to play this Fury. I would like to get this Fable the Mirror Break down first. Excellent. We could play the City of Traitors here. I'm not going to. They'll probably just die because we're going to play a red source as soon as we find one anyway. And we can also loot this away with our Fable next turn. A Ponder. Right. That Ponder took a long time and they didn't shuffle. And now they've played a Meticulous Archive. An Uro. So we're very much locked into a control deck here. There are some tempo decks playing up the Beanstalk with Hooting Mandrills and stuff, but they're normally just straight blue-green. Sometimes Rug, but never Bant, in my experience. Okay, what are we doing here? Are we going to play this Broadside Bombardiers? Are they going to stifle that? Okay. I think, for the sake of my life total and the fact that we're not going to loot away with this now, I'm going to play this Rabblemaster and start this ticking up. Getting some more friends to attack with. We clock very quickly when we get going, but there could be something like a Terminus in our near future. But if that happens, we at least have the Bombardiers and the Fable on the backside. How much damage is this next turn? 9. And then if we throw the Bombardiers, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we have lethal next turn if we want to go for it. We're very surprised our opponent doesn't have a removal spell at this point. Most likely a Swords to Plowshares. There's an island. So I'm definitely getting the impression our opponent is very much on the Bant spectrum rather than like the full 4-5 colour Leyline binding deck. But they might have an off-colour fetch. An off-colour tri-land they can fetch to give themselves the Leyline binding domain. But they'd probably be quite happy to cast it for just like a reduced cost rather than the full 1 mana super reduction. Our opponent was thinking about something there. So we're going to have a choice whether or not we go for it right now to just try and get the win. or we try and interact with our opponent, or sorry, try and have something saved for the next turn. Our opponent does have to answer this, and they could be a Supreme Verdict deck that's just waiting on the one white pip. So I'm going to do anything in our main phase here. So next turn we can Broadside Bombardiers and then Reflection of Kiki-Jiki as well, which is quite a strong thing to do. Kind of just want to have a little bit more in the tank. A Leyline Binding. So this is going to take out our Rabblemaster. So they could do this in... No, they can't do it at the beginning of combat, right? Because this is at the beginning of combat step. Okay, so they're going to get rid of this. And then we're going to play the Bombardiers. So we can fling a treasure at our opponent to bring the pain a little bit more. So a little cheeky shock to the face. But we have quite a lot of damage for next turn. If our opponent doesn't interact with us, we will win the game next turn. So it's on our opponent to do something here. They could play an Uro, which can roadblock one of our creatures, but not one of our menace creatures. So it'll probably have to just kill the Shaman token. And if they don't leave up any white mana, then we can more comfortably use our Reflection of Kiki-Jiki aggressively, instead of using it as a, they can't remove our creature without us copying it first. There's a green and a blue in the pool, so I think we're looking at... Oh, and a white. Okay, this could be a Prismatic Ending. Okay, no, we're just looking at an Uro, I think. Holding up mana for a Source to Plowshares. If they have both, then they might be able to stabilize here. We can Shatterskull Smashing their creature out of the way. We are allowed to do that. But our opponent's going to have 5 cards in hand. Possibly 4 if they put a land in. If they put a land in, that means they have access to more spells. Alright, so they've got a Flow Strands. They might be able to fire off a Leyline Binding. Or a couple of plows here. Okay, so just ploughing straight up. If they wait till our turn, then we can copy in response. Okay, so we're going to remove this Uro, I believe. So we got to go 6 damage on this. So this is red, red, 2, 4, 6. Alright. So we have to deal 12 damage because as soon as you go to 6, it doubles. And then we can crash in for 7 this turn. Throw the treasure token. Our opponent's got a response. This might just be ploughing our Broadside Bombardiers. Might be difficult for us to limp over the finish line. Yep, so they're ploughing the Bombardiers. They've already filled up their graveyard quite a lot for their Uro. Now we just get to undo the life they gained last turn, but we're going to need something big to close this game out. I don't think this Fable's going to be enough on its own. We need like a Rabblemaster that can 2-turn them, or a Bombardiers that can just throw the last points of damage. Our opponent didn't cast anything that turn. Intriguing. Let's attack. So we'll keep this mountain in hand so that we can loot it away with the Fable if our Fable resolves. Our opponent is showing us Hardcast Force of Will, which could draw them a card with this Beanstalk. Might be the card they need. But this does not win the game next turn, so I think we do have to commit this Fable to the board. But if this gives our opponent a Hardcast Force of Will into a redraw, that is unfortunate for us. But if we do nothing here and don't add to our board, then our opponent gets to not have to die next turn. That gives them another turn of trying to stabilize. So we don't want them to find a fetch and play this Uro. There is an argument that we just don't cast anything then and hope that they never find the things they need to put their Uro into play. Alright, that was not a fetch land. So they can't put the Uro in this turn. But they've still got 3 cards over there. That is a mighty fine Magic the Gathering card. I think we're going to attack like this. We could have played this pre-combat and tried to find something else. But the more our opponent uses the mana on their turn... Okay, an Orcish Bowmasters. So I'm going to say the more our opponent uses mana on their turn, the better it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they might still be able to get us with that. Alright, let's see if they trade off their guys, which obviously makes our One Ring better. I was going to say the more mana they try and interact with on this turn, the better it is for us playing this One Ring. Okay, and we're also going to get this guy off. Nice. Does our opponent have another Force of Will in their hand? I hope not. I'm going to use life here rather than the treasures. So they've got a Hardcast Force of Will. I think they win this game. Because they just get to immediately play the Uro, top themselves up to 8. Alright, we're just in, aren't we? That's pretty tasty. So we could have used treasures, but if we draw something where we need lots of red mana, an Unlicensed Hearse. So this won't deal us damage because of the One Ring, so we can use this and just play out this Unlicensed Hearse and immediately eat this Uro before they can do anything with it. Which gets rid of one of the things that we actually worried about in this game was an Uro running away with it. So let's get rid of the Uro and probably a Force. They already have double plow over there. So for the purposes of Mystic Sanctuary, we can't deny anything. If we go after one plow there, we're obviously going after the Uro. But next time we can go after both the plows and stop Mystic Sanctuary. If our opponent has a fetch land, maybe we are holding back on our Unlicensed Hearse so that they can't just fetch and immediately put it on top. Alright, we got the one ring ticking. Let's draw some more cards. We want to do this first in case our opponent does have a Bowmaster. If they ping us, it's annoying. But if they ping down our creatures, that's way more annoying. Okay, it does look like a Bowmaster's. Okay, but we could draw something like a Fury and just immediately blow these up. I'm just going to get them a reasonably sized creature. Okay. If our opponent has nothing, we can win the game here. So we can go Rabblemaster first to sort of test the waters to see if they've got any counter magic. And then we can play these two out. This pause does make me think our opponent has something. We would love our opponent to interact with this Rabblemaster. Like a Plow once it's in play or something. But they're not really going to have a window before we put our next spell on the stack. Okay, so play this mountain out. We need to be aware of our life total here. If this Fable, are you going to interact with this one? If not, we can burn these treasures to make the Broadside Bombardiers. Are we just in here, are we? Let's try this one. If we get to attack with this, we should have lethal. Last card in hand, Plow. It's a Dress Down. That's pretty good. It's going to stop our creatures for a turn. But they will need to find an answer. However, their deck is built around finding answers to things. That was just a cantrip that bought them another draw step. Or technically 2 draw steps because they get the draw off of the Dress Down. No Terminus. That's useful. If they Supreme Verdict, they lose their Bowmasters. Alright, we managed to get there. Really interesting game. There's definitely a lot of different choices we could have made, especially early on. I think we were right to just play the Blood Moon because that would also guarantee us red mana if it resolved and possibly win the game. As you can see from our opponent's mana base here, it probably would have. Okay, sideboard wise, what are we wanting to do here? The only things that I kind of like here are the blasts. I think our Unlicensed Hearse do enough to keep the Euro in check. The Chalice can shut down things like plows. This all seems fine. Boarding in blasts while still having the Chalices doesn't feel great. The Canoptek Scarab Swarm is probably the best thing we can board in here. I think I'll take out 1 Hearse for 1 Scarab Swarm. They kind of do similar things, but I think the Scarab Swarm is going to give us more threat power a lot of the time than the Hearse. And if we draw like multiple Hearses, they just feel kind of rubbish. I think this is fine. Like we could board in the blasts, but they're really only hitting Uros and counter spells, and if they get locked under in Chalice, that doesn't feel good. This is going to do more work getting rid of Plows, Ponders, Brainstorms. This whole pile of stuff is great. The one ring can certainly run away with the game too. Yeah, I'm happy to go back in like this. I don't think we want to be playing things like Leyline just to stop the Euro. It is annoying, but we can certainly beat around it. This is kind of an ugly one. We have a turn 2 Blood Moon. Or we could do turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Blood Moon, but our city dies. But we have a lot of gas here. I think we'll keep this because we have so many things that are kind of like, not quite must counters, but, well, this probably is a must counter, but Fable's pretty close. The one ring is a must counter too. Right, they're not playing anything out here. So something like a Spell Snare, perhaps? Okay, that was a very good draw. I'll play this Sokenzan. I'll play this Chrome Mox. We have to decide what gets imprinted here. I think it's the Bombardiers because these cards just do more on their own and this just dies to a plow. So I think it's the Bombardiers goes underneath it. And we're just going to try and outmuscle our opponent because this might not resolve. So like a little Bombardiers that just gets clapped by a plow isn't going to be very exciting. Alright, the Force of Will pitching the Lorien Revealed. Okay, so we're equal 2 for 2 on that because we had to pitch the Bombardiers into the Chrome Mox. Are they going to fetch a basic here? I would imagine there's a basic. So they probably get a Plains and then maybe cycle Lorien Revealed, or they get an island and don't have a Lorien Revealed to cycle. A Savannah. Spicy. Now they might have Force of Vigor in their deck, which is very good against what we're doing. And they can take out our Blood Moon and our Chrome Mox and send us back to the Stone Age. But hopefully that's what the One Ring is supposed to do in this deck and just recoup anything lost from those sorts of exchanges. Alright, if our Blood Moon resolves, our chance of winning the game seems very high. If we play the Fable of the Mirror Breaker and they have a Force of... So if they have Force of Vigor, which is kind of the worst case scenario, we play this out, we lose both of these, and then next turn we can play the One Ring. That seems fine. So I think we do go for the Blood Moon here. This might just be lights out. If we didn't have a land in hand, I'd be more inclined to play the Fable of the Mirror Breaker out, so that if they were to Force of Vigor, we at least have our guy that can make some tokens. Okay, they didn't Force of Vigor on the end step. Our opponent is left with just red mana. I don't believe they're running... Oh, well, actually, we saw the Bowmaster, so maybe they are further into the colours than we initially thought. Okay, we'll play this Mountain out, courtesy of our Blood Moon. If this didn't get countered, I can't believe... I think we... do we play out this One Ring or do we play out this Fable? And they're both very good cards. I think I'm just going to get the Fable this turn. So the reason I wanted the Fable there is I want to start pressuring our opponent's life total. Alright. Yeah, it felt like we were sort of there. The only way that our opponent wins that one is if they can draw out some basics. So I think pressuring our opponent here and then gassing up with the One Ring the next turn makes a bit more sense. So we're 2-0, absolutely cruising. Let's go to round 3. Alright. What does this hand do? We play a land on turn 1, then we can try for a Bombardiers on turn 2. This seems acceptable. I don't think I want to play out the Smashing. I would like to have the ability to play through a Wasteland. And if they Wasteland our city, that's not so bad if we've already got 2 mana out of it in one go. If we play out the Smashing there, they can Wasteland us. And then we kind of reset the game. But our opponent has more mana, more information, and they might be able to have some fetch land goodness and get around what we're trying to pull on them with potential Blood Moons and all sorts. Okay, so we've got a Mishra's Ball and an Urza's Ball. Both of these tend to suggest a deck that is more on the sort of combo-oriented spectrum. Underground Mortuary. So I think we might be looking at some kind of Beseech Storm deck, and the green is a splash for Veil of Summer. So I'm not expecting any counter magic from our opponent here. Now we have the age-old question of, are we trying to get our opponent dead and find some pieces, or are we just going to try and stop their graveyard here? I think this is a tough call. I think I just want to get the Fable this turn, and then next turn we can try and dig into things like Chalice of the Void. But let it be known that we are opening ourselves up to a potential Beseech the Mirror line on our opponent's next turn. Now an Unlicensed Hearse might not even stop that, because if it's just there, they'll just do a different line, like maybe getting the enchantment, I think it's Song of Creation, that draws them a whole bunch of cards, lets them play additional lands, and that is fine. Or they could even do a big Beseech train. Sure, so you can hit our hand here. This feels like our opponent is not comboing this turn. At least that's what I hope. But they could be like an Echo of Eons deck. And they can just spin. Now, Unlicensed Hearse doesn't break up Echo of Eons. If they crack the LED, they get first priority, so they put it on the stack, so it's not in the graveyard for us to remove with our Unlicensed Hearse. Our hand has quite a lot of redundancy here. Like, they can only take one of the Bombardiers. The land isn't really something we care about going here. They can take the Hearse, but I'm not really sure we're about that Hearse life just yet. Alright, they've taken the Hearse, and they've got a Saga. Alright, so Blood Moon looks great here. What are we going to draw? A Mountain. I would like to use Feather and Breaker's ability. I think I'll get rid of this. And one of these, because we could draw into a piece of fast mana, plus... I guess if we draw into a piece of fast mana, plus a 3-drop like a Blood Moon, that's really good for us. Alright, part of what I wanted, but not the whole thing. Are we playing out the City of Traitors this turn? I think so. No attacks. So we could throw this for 2 to put our opponent to 12. Play this out as well. And then next turn we hit for 6. And then we fling this, which is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we'd be 1 shy. If we play this guy and throw him right now, that's 5 damage. And our opponent's on 9. And then we go for 4 and then 5 damage again next turn. So I think the correct play here is to cast a Simian Spirit Guide. And then turn it into a Lava Axe. And this way we have lethal damage in hand next turn. We could also just use the Fable of the Mirror Breaker to sack next turn as well. This can only sack creatures and artifacts, so we can't sacrifice this until it flips. So we should be able to kill our opponent before the Urza Saga pops. If they need that for something like a Lion's Eye Diamond or some other mana or whatever. Right, our opponent did quite a bit of thinking there and has now played a Mishra's Bauble. So they can make an Urza Saga construct here. That is a thing that our opponent is allowed to do, which can block. So this can block the Shaman token, but it's not big enough. Yeah, this is really awkward. And we just have to go to attacks here. Our opponent will get another turn. They make a construct. We can blow up the construct if we want to save our Shaman token, but that's not really going to help us out in the long run. So they trade there. We deal them 2. We can deal them another 5 or another 2. I think we're going to take the construct out. It might be relevant for the purposes of Metalcraft or something. And we will let these trade off. And then that puts our opponent to 7. So we can cast this guy. And then we can throw this treasure to put our opponent to 5. And then all we have to do is attack next turn. And we kill our opponent. Or we throw this and our opponent's at 2. But what does that actually do for us? Them being on 2 is not going to change anything here, is it? They're not running like ad nauseum type stuff. They're unlikely to use more than one fetch land in their turn. I think we throw the treasure at our opponent. This way we have slightly more in the way of bodies if need be. So we can fire 10 damage at our opponent with 2 Broadside Bombardiers attacking. One throws the Simian Spirit Guide, the other one throws the other Broadside Bombardiers, and that's 10 before even blocks happen. We don't have to worry about any life gain from this Urza Saga. Also, the pause in our opponent's and in our turn from our opponent makes me think that they are debating whether or not they need this Mishra's Bauble for Metalcraft. They didn't crack it, so that's less cards they have to work with. Something like a Galvanic Relay is not good enough here because we have them dead next turn, so they have to go big here. But something like a Beseech the Mirror is a good way of getting the ball rolling, and Beseech the Mirror plus a few other cards can certainly be enough to get the game won. The fact that we hit a mountain that turn was a little bit unfortunate. Like a Lock Piece or another Bombardiers would have obviously been great. A Fury was something we could have cast and thrown for lethal. Okay, we're going to see a Beseech the Mirror here, sacrificing this Bauble. That's why they kept it around, not for Metalcraft, but for the purposes of having something to sacrifice. What are they going to get? So they could go get the Song of Creation here and then play some spells out and try some cards. That's what I think is going to happen here. Yeah, okay, so this isn't a deterministic line, but if they've got like 2 redraws, the chances are it is. Alright, we are shields down here, so we can just press F6 and let our opponent have a jolly good time. And see if we're dead or if they're dead. Alright, they've imprinted an Infernal Tutor onto their Chrome Mox. They've got a fetch land there. So maybe if we put them to 2, they wouldn't be able to use a second fetch land, which might be relevant with the Song of Creation. Although the chances are they're probably going to be fine here. Yeah, every time they have a 0 here, it's just absolute gravy for them. I'm suspecting that we're going to die here. So another Beseech the Mirror here is lethal, because they've got enough stuff to sacrifice several times over and hit the tendrils. The first one you sacrifice the Song of Creation, so you didn't draw into the tendrils. Alright, they've got an Infernal Tutor. What were they going to reveal to us? A Lion's Eye Diamond. Sure, this just gives them more draws. There's a Lion's Eye Diamond, drawing some extra cards. Our opponent should be able to put together the win here, but we do have to let them have it, rather than just scooping. The fail rate here is probably like 1% at this point. There is a Bauble. Like, if they cast a Beseech the Mirror, then it's just lights out for us. Thought Seize. They wouldn't have been able to do this if we had put them to 2, but they don't need to Thought Seize there. They're just doing that to make sure that everything is fine. Because they're not passing a turn here, because they're definitely dead. Right, there's the tendrils. Okay. So we bricked a little bit on draws towards the back end. So what would I like here? They didn't show us Echo, but they probably have something along the lines of Gaia's Will in there. So I think the Leyline is better than the Hearse for what we're doing here. The One Ring can buy us a turn where we can't be killed by tendrils. They might have something in the sideboard that can kill us though. The Mindbreak Trap is obviously top draw here. The Blood Moon is fine, but not impressive. The Fury's probably the least impressive here. I do like the fact that we can evoke one of these and then fling it with a Rabblemaster, with a Bombardiers, and just put our opponent in the dirt. So that is something that's quite appealing to me, as just like a burn spell. Is that good enough? Would we like some more Hearses just so we can stop Gaia's Will lines? Like, our opponent showed us that Gaia's Will... The way Gaia's Will beats us is if it's their turn 1 play, basically. Otherwise, if it's a few turns in the game, they can just go and get Song of Creation and play around Graveyard Hate, and that just does us in. So, an intriguing proposition here. Do I just want the Furies so I can just try and dome them? Now, if we'd have drawn a Fury in that last game, that would have been enough to win the game. So, or should we just try and be a little bit more sensible and just have these Hearses and just try and prison our opponent out a little bit more? The Brotherhood's End does kill a bunch of their stuff if they play it out, but it does kill a bunch of our stuff as well, which is kind of awkward. I don't really want to blow up my own Chalice. I think I'm going to submit like this. I think there's definitely varying routes you could take in this game. But like I always say with sideboarding, the most important thing is to have a plan when you're sideboarding how you want the game to go and actually play towards that plan. Speaking of, this hand feels pretty good to me. We can Blood Moon and Chalice on turn 1. So they're unlikely to be able to interact with our things here. So I think we keep this. And we can just shut them off of ever having the mana they need. Unless they have something like a turn 1 basic land. Is what they're going to need here. Because we put this on 0, it shuts off all the 0 mana bits. So no petals, Mox, and anything like that. So our opponent is unlikely to be able to generate mana that way. And then the Blood Moon will mean that all the other mana they generate will be red. And that's not really their colour. Red is sort of like a thing they dip into for like relay and stuff. So we go Ancient Tomb. Chrome Mox, Simian Spirit Guide gets to be a permanent mana source for us. I'm a little bit apprehensive. So like a Force of Vigor. That seems very unlikely for our opponent to have here. There's a Blood Moon. And Chalice for 0. So Chalice for 0 versus Chalice for 1 against Storm is interesting, because Chalice for 0 allows them to use Veil of Summer to play through it. But Chalice for 0 stops more cards in their deck usually. Ideally, you want 1 on each number. I would like a land here so we can start Rabble-mastering. Okay, we didn't hit the land. So now we're just going to play this boring unlicensed Hearse. So it might not do anything in this entire game, but we've got it. Right, found the land. Now we can put a win condition into play. We haven't shown our opponent anything like a Mindbreak Trap or a Leyline. Next turn we get to play a second Rabblemaster, and that should be plenty of damages. Alright, our opponent's had enough. They were just waiting for us to actually have a win condition. If we just had prison pieces, maybe they have enough time to sculpt something. That's not how it went. Is the Unlicensed Hearse good on the draw is the next question. It does seem potentially on the slow side. Fury could dome our opponent, if that's what we're up for. There's also a red card that pitches into Chrome Mox, which is kind of important. This is only really good against one card. We don't really want to play this as our first thing we're dropping anyway. Fury isn't great. It does clock quick if we have a bunch of fast mana in a hand, but we need 2 cards to pitch it. No, we're going to stick with what we've got here. Right, our opener has the Leylines, which is something we want. It has immediate pressure, but doesn't have a follow-up lock piece. Leyline of Void on its own is not really good enough a lot of the time, but it might slow them down a turn. It will stop the quickest routes, so maybe that gives us enough time for our turn 3 Fable the Mirrorbreaker looting to actually find us what we want. So I will keep this one, and I will put both of these. Am I putting both of them in? If we put one in, they can bounce one and then maybe go. But if we keep one in our hand, we can pitch it to the Fable, and that gives us more looks without giving up anything useful. So I think I'm only going to put one in. That could backfire on us. Bloodstained Mire. I don't believe our opponent has basic... they might not have... Okay, so they do have basic lands in their deck. Okay, so they're not like the Epic Storm. Okay, so we're going to get Thoughtseize here. They're going to take our Fable, most likely. The other thing is we could put a second Leyline in, and that would have been good with the Bombardiers and give us a 6-drop to throw. They could take the Simian Spirit Guide here and slow us down for a turn. They could take the Fable and strand this Leyline that we were hoping to loot away into other prison pieces. And there's some options there. I wouldn't fault someone for putting the second Leyline into play just to play around things being bouncing it, as well as having fuel for a Bombardiers. But I opted to keep it for the purposes of Fable and looting it away. Somebody who plays this deck more might have more insight into it, but I think having more looks at some harder prison pieces like Chalice or Blood Moon is kind of ideal. Or, you know, just threats that we can tempo our opponent out with. We don't have any like really scary haymakers like... Okay, they took our piece of fast mana. I was going to say, we don't have any really scary haymakers like the Trinispheres and stuff like that. I don't know if our opponent's trying to combo this turn, or they're just getting their stuff out of their hand before a Chalice for 0 comes down. But they might just be putting a... What's it called? Beseech the Mirror into the enchantment, Song of Creation. Yeah, that looks like what they're doing. So they're going to start the game with that, and all they need to do is draw some gas and just keep going. So our opponent can brick. If our opponent just draws lands... Oh, they're just doing empty the Warrens line. Oh, that's interesting. That's a lot of goblins. And we do have an Ancient Tomb, which isn't the best for us. Yeah, I think our opponent might have us here. I certainly wouldn't bet against them. Blood Moon... Yeah, they have the big turn 1 here, which is going to be hard for us to contest. We could have boarded in the Sweeper, but we don't even have the mana to cast that in a timely fashion anyway. We'd have to draw a Chrome Mox or a Simian Spirit Guide to even attempt that. What can we draw here to help us out? I don't think there's anything. Nope, I think we've just been bested here. We're only on 6 life. I don't think there's anything in our deck here. We could have kept the Furies in, but a Fury here is still not good enough. Yeah, we just got womboed pretty hard there. That is the power of the Storm deck, just being able to do all these different turn 1 threats. Not an easy deck to play, but the rewards when you learn it are very strong. Alright, so we are now 2-1. Let's go to round 4. This is a pretty awkward hand. We need to draw a red card for it to do anything, but we can just drop the one ring on turn 2. We're on the play, so we can start off with some graveyard hating play. I don't like it, but I think it might be passable enough. Like, the one ring is such a powerful card, and we get 2 attempts at it. And we get to shut off a lot of decks in the format. Not necessarily shut them off cold, but we can definitely slow them down. Some decks we will just shut off with the hearse. Right. Our opponent's gone to 6 cards so far. Ancient Tomb into the old unlicensed hearse. No graveyards for you, opponent. Again, that might not do anything. Grove of the Burn Willows. So our opponent is likely going to be some sort of lands strategy. And we have a Blood Moon sat in our hand right now. A Wasteland. Alright, this Blood Moon sat in our hand might not do what we want it to do. A Mox Diamond is very good here. Yeah, if we'd have had the source to play the Blood Moon on turn 1, that would have been excellent for us. So Boseiju is going to be their way out of what we're doing here. A red card. Not a red card. It's pretty ugly. We should have unlicensed Terrace at the end of our opponent's turn as well. I guess we're on this mountain. Our opponent can't recoup these things at instant speed, so we should have just ate them at the end step, because now they might end up with enough stuff that they can get some sort of value off of a loam or whatever. We can definitely cast Blood Moon next turn, and that is going to make our opponent very sad. We don't have additional Blood Moons in Maguses or anything. I think that's probably fine at this point. Another Chrome Mox, that's not helpful. So Unlicensed Hearse is definitely useful in this matchup. And the Blood Moon is going to be pretty scary for our opponent, because it's going to take out there as a Saga. Shut these off to an extent. But they do have the green mana off of the Mox Diamond. So something like a Boseiju, they're out here. They don't have a way of tutoring into their hand. A Blast Zone that doesn't do anything. Also comes in with no counters, so it will be popping for 0 if they ever do remove this and then pop it. Obviously they can put counters on it. Right, let's keep eating these cards in our opponent's graveyard. We do need to assemble something that wins the game. A land or... Okay, a land still doesn't get us there because this only taps for 1. A little bit clunky here. But we have powerful permanents in play for the matchup. And we either draw a land and play the one ring, or a red card and play the one ring. Or we draw an artifact that doesn't do anything and we do nothing. So the one thing that is scariest here is if our opponent plays Dark Depths and then finds a way of removing our Blood Moon, they just immediately get a 20/20. A Fury. Okay, let's cast this Chrome Mox. I would very much like to put this Fury underneath it and jam a one ring. That feels like a big step towards winning this game. If our opponent infinite time, they can get out of this. I will draw a card. It's a mountain. I'll play the mountain and pass. So next turn, we get some more cards. And we should be able to find something that can win the game among them. So we get to see 3 cards next turn. So our opponent with Field of the Dead makes me think that they're more towards like a sort of 8 mulch style list perhaps. But we will see. Right, we take 1 from the one ring. A Fury. That is a creature that has power and toughness. These are also creatures that have power and toughness. 1, 2, 3. Let's play the Rabblemaster. I think I'll play out this Chrome Mox. And I will imprint this Fury. I just want to get this Broadside Bombardiers ticking. 1, 2, 3. Do I want to crew this unlicensed hearse and attack for more damage? I think I do. They've only got 1 card in hand, so they can't Punishing Fire this now. Crew this. There's better targets for Punishing Fire anyway. Let's go attacks. Punishing Fire on the Bombardiers. On the Rabblemaster. Alright, they're just scooping it up. Sure. So, Canoptek Scarab Swarm seems good here. I prefer the sort of unlicensed hearse disruption rather than the Leylines here. Dead and Gone becomes a thing that we're interested in. How useful is Chalice of the Void in this matchup? If we put it on 2, we don't have to worry about Life from the Loam for a while. But if we swap it out for these Dead Gones, then we can actually interact with Marit Lage. So I think this is what we're dealing with here. Because their answer for Blood Moon is going to be Force of Vigor, which is going to get through our Chalice anyway. And it's going to be Boseiju, which we can't stop with that. So I think just having these makes sense. Canoptek Scarab Swarm exiles lands cards from their graveyard, which is something we actively want to do. Making flyers so we don't die to Marit Lage is another thing we want to do. So I think this looks pretty nice to me. Force of Vigor is the big thing that's going to get us. But if they're like an 8 mulch deck, and they sort of try and do their mulching stuff, we can maybe get somewhere immediately. Okay, we have a Dead Gone. We have a Blood Moon. I think this is acceptable. We can lead off on the mountain so that we can be guaranteed to have a shot at Blood Moon. Alright, so they can find a basic if they want one. If there was some sort of Elvish Reclaimer deck, then we obviously have the dead that can deal with it at this moment in time. Not really expecting Elvish Reclaimer, but the Field of the Dead is not a thing you would normally expect to see in a lot of lands lists. And Mulch makes sense with the Punishing Fires because you can bin it off and then get it back. Just some nice value there. And Urza's Saga. You are going to go right into the bin soon. Sylvan Library. That is a very powerful Magic the Gathering card. I do believe we are on Blood Moon rather than trying to Rabblemaster. We just shut this down while we can. Sylvan Library is going to do a lot of work for our opponent here, though, and dig them out of a bit of a spot. But if they spend life points to draw extra cards off of the library, it does mean that our Rabblemaster can clock quicker. Pretty much every card, first card is probably like a turn off of the clock down the line. Alright, our opponent recognises that and they put them both back on top. They have a fetch land to shuffle. Not that they can shuffle one in this Blood Moon, but they might have something like a Force of Vigor and a fetch land. But we don't have to worry about that right now. A Fury. Don't get to cast the spells in our hand right now, so we just have to pass. This means if our opponent crop rotations and then Force of Vigors, we're not doing too badly. A Boseiju. Yes, I would like to take a mountain and put it into play. This is in the end step, so we don't get to cast any spells, but maybe we can Dead Gone something. We do have a follow-up Blood Moon that we can drop as well. I would like to find another Soul Land, and then we can play Blood Moon and Rabblemaster in one turn cycle, and that is quite a good turn for us. This Fury is not amazing in this deck, in this matchup. What is this? 3 mana, it's going to be like Crucible of Worlds. So they can copy a land with a Thespian Stage, like the Forests. They have green available. That makes hard casting Force of Vigor also pretty doable. An unlicensed Hearse. That is not what I wanted. It's not terrible, but I think we're going to go in with an Ancient Tomb. We don't have to take any damage from it due to our opponent's Yavimaya. I think we're going to see the Thespian Stage copy the Forest here. No, we didn't see that. Is this just going to be... No, they didn't float any mana either. So next turn we can play the Rabblemaster and start jabbing our opponent. Valakut Expiration. That's a pretty funky one. So whenever they play a land, they exile a top card of their library. They can play that card until end of turn. Any cards they don't play get converted into damage to our face. So we'll take one off of this Valakut Expiration. And it's only to our face. It's to each opponent. So get it ready for the old 2 HG, I suppose. Right, we've found a mountain. We have a lot of those in our deck. Let's play this Rabblemaster. Let's start attacking. So next turn we can play the One Ring. Give ourselves a little bit of protection. Depends what our opponent leaves open mana-wise. Because this turn there's no way that they can make a Marrowlage in our end step here. Actually, that's not true if they have Elvish Spirit Guide, but why would they have that in their deck? Like, if their Forest is tapped, then we can commit stuff to the board without fear of a 2020. Otherwise, we maybe have to hold up this Dead Gone. If our opponent can find an Exploration, then they can have the Valakut Exploration doing some stuff by getting additional hits, and then they get closer and closer towards finding answers, but it can't find the Boseiju because our opponent has no ability to discard it from their hand, which is what you need for the Boseiju, but they could find a Loam, which could get back that Boseiju. So I am very much wanting to get this unlicensed Hearse down as soon as possible. Lava Spur Boots. They're going to play that, or they're going to use it to ping us. Punishing Fire on our little friend. Sure. We're going to take a ping from this. City of Traitors. Our opponent has green mana open, which makes me want to play this Hearse so I can hold up the Dead Gone. Alternatively, we can play up the One Ring. But I kind of want to play the Hearse so our opponent can't Life them alone. Then what are we doing with the rest of our mana? Not a lot. We could play the Fury if our opponent has... I guess they can't crop rotate and have Force of Vigor here. So I think we do play the Fury this turn and just get a big clock going. So this is 7, 7, 7, and then they die. Yeah, so no 2020 this turn. Next turn we can just play the Hearse and use that to stop Life from the Loam, taking out the Boseiju. This turn is quite a crucial one, I think. Also, our opponent gets to stack what gets exiled with Valakut Exploration as well, so they can just put cards they don't want there and turn them into damage. And it also helps them grind through their library cards without paying life. They're not paying extra life. Okay, so there is the Dark Depths. That's one of the things that I was worried about. We now need to dodge Force of Vigor and a Boseiju. We do have the Hearse, which can stop the Life from Alone getting this back. And we have the Dead Gone, which at least gives us some interaction against our opponent's Marit token, if they're relying on that to block or whatever. I do like the Rabblemaster here. Do I like that more than the Unlicensed Hearse? I don't think so. Jam this Hearse. Let's go to attacks. It's got 7 points of damage in. Alright, they didn't try to make the Marit somehow. And block. Force of Vigor. So we exile 2 cards. I would like to take out the... Which one is it here? I think the Maze of Ith is pretty annoying for us. So we'll take that one. And I think we want to take out the Punishing Fire so our opponent can't gain that back to start removing our creatures. Alright, so we lose the Blood Moon. They get a 20/20. We can bounce it. We want our opponent to make decisions before they know that this is getting bounced. These decks do not tend to play Sejiri Step. So I'm not expecting that out of our opponent. I would like to bounce your creature, please. If they do crop rotate into a Sejiri Step here, then I'll be a bit sad. But it's not something I was expecting. An Unlicensed Hearse. Pretty happy to see that one. So this is a 2-turn clock. Anyway, we don't need to add anything else to the board right now. If we play the Hearse off of this mana, that keeps us covered from some graveyard shenanigans. We can play the Rabblemaster and hold up Dead Gone, or we could hold up 2 copies of Dead Gone. We already have Lethal in play right now. If we can get 2 turns with it. If we get Wastelanded off, they can't Wasteland us right now. Yeah, I think this is fine. This gives us an additional 1 damage this turn, and means we have a lethal threat next turn if something were to happen to any of our creatures. Alright, we've got to the beginning of combat, so I don't think our opponent has a Punishing Fire here. So this is 8, this puts our opponent to 2. Alright, we got some action here. There is a crop rotation. Are we going to see a 20/20? I think we might. A Dark Depths. Sure, you can sacrifice 2 of your lands and then we will bounce your guy. I hate to do it to a fellow Marit enthusiast. Get out of here. I don't believe our opponent can draw a single card. But it's enough. Yep. They agree and we've got the match. So pretty quick rattling through these ones today. We are 3-1. The only thing we lost to so far was a Storm and all of our wins have been solid 2-0s. So let's go to the final round and see if we can put that 4-1 on the board. I don't like our opening hand, we're going to mulligan it. Want something that I can commit to the board early. Alright, this one is exactly that sort of thing. I think we can probably get rid of a Fury. So we can go Lockpiece and then like Chalice. Lockpiece and Fable, or we can do straight up aggro if that's what we want to do. Mr. Rainforest, this could fetch something that can mess with our creatures. Oh, hello Fury, welcome back. I'm going to play this down, because this could get something like a Swords to Plowshares or something. A Tundra for a Swords to Plowshares. So if we get this down first, then our creatures are way more likely to survive. Our opponent didn't crack in response, so I'm not expecting a 1-drop here, but we might see some kind of cycle. There it is. Lorien revealed. So our opponent is playing on basic as best they can. We could be looking at a snow-covered island. That is slightly unusual, especially alongside a regular basic forest. So maybe we're looking at like a Bant deck with Field of the Dead. So they want many different names. They might have snow-covered island and regular island, and then forest and snow-covered forest. Okay, a volcanic island. A Chrome Mox. Chrome Mox. A Fury. Is our opponent like Rug? Big stuff? Guided Passage. I love this card so much. If you're unfamiliar with this one, reveal cards from your library. So I basically get to choose a creature, a land, and a non-creature, non-land card from their deck. And they get to have them. So we get to screenshot our opponent's cool deck here. So what is their plan? So they get a creature, a land, and a non-creature, non-land. So what lands we want our opponent to have? Intriguing. We'll give them a Chrome Mox here, I think. We'll give them a... If we give them a fetch, they can go and fetch whatever they want, but it costs them 1 life. Not a big fan of that. I think we give them the Sanctuary here, and then we have to give them a creature. Which of these creatures do I not really want to face? I don't really want to face any of these creatures. They're all pretty good. But the Broadside Bombardiers is the thing that we can actually interact with. I guess we can interact with the Endurance pretty well. Sure, have an Endurance. Cool. We could have given our opponent a 1-drop, I suppose, instead of the Chrome Mox. A Blood Moon. So we can shut our opponent off of blue. We can have a look at the whole deck whenever we want. So we can shut our opponent off of blue here. Although they have just given them a Chrome Mox. So that was probably not the smartest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I think we're going... We don't have a follow-up red source, is the issue. How many forces and stuff did we see? 4 forces and 2 force of negations. I think our spell is going to resolve. So I'm going to cast this Fable of the Mirror Breaker. We didn't see any dazes or anything in here. Is our opponent playing 3 force of figures? They are not. I guess we can play this now. And the plan is to attack, make a thing, do the Blood Moon whilst floating 2 mana, and then we don't have the dice from this. We might be able to play 2 3-drops next turn, if all goes to plan. And just fetch down. So this is the turn where our opponent can play the Endurance. Another Blood Moon. We don't want this Blood Moon. Do we want 2 Blood Moons at all? How good is Rabblemaster into Fury? Rabblemaster doesn't seem great into... No, I think we just get rid of this one because we can always just pitch to Fury. Okay. Interesting. So this attacks. Then the Fury gets their guy. And we Blood Moon. Not feeling spectacular about this. I do think we have to attack with this Shaman though. Get our red mana. We don't have to Fury next turn. If we don't want to. We have seen Broadside Bombardiers from our opponents. Right, we know they've got this Endurance. Yeah, playing against Guided Passage has kind of fried my little brain, unfortunately. Right, so they're going to shuffle this Blood Moon back in, I think. Alright. I don't think we're going to try and Fury this. If we wait, we might be able to get a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. We might be able to actually hard cast this Fury next turn. And that might be a lot better for us if we can find a red source. And then we can take out this Endurance and then have it on tap with our Fable of the Mirror Breaker, just copying it. Interesting deck. Let's keep looking at it. So they've got up the Beanstalk, which is weird because they don't have that much stuff to support it, really. They've got the Forces and the Murktides. And I guess the Lorien Revealeds. Oh, they got 3 Furies hanging around too. I guess it's okay. Guided Passage is a cool one, though. Opponent is representing Hardcast Force of Will over there. I don't like how I've played this game, and I think we're going to lose because of some of the choices I've made. But we shall see. Okay, we found the red source we wanted. Play this. Play this red source. So don't have the Force. We're in a happy spot. Oh, they don't have the Force. I will take that. So now we just get to machine gun all their creatures down if we can make it to our next untap step. Whenever they play a guy, we can just copy a Fury and wreck their day. Keep looking at their deck when it's our opponent's turn, because there's a lot to take in here when you're seeing something that's pretty brew territory. So we've got 8 cantrips, and that's kind of it. Okay, they're petty thefting our Chalice, that's fine. Yeah, so they've got 8 cantrips, no like lightning bolt type stuff. They're using Fury as their removal spell. And they got a couple of Fire Ice. So instead of Force of Will, it was Brazen Borrower, front and backside. There's a Brainstorm. Our opponent very much needs to answer the Fury. And we know their answers are just Brazen Borrower and the Furies. That's the only thing that can kill our guys. They have 1 Lightning Bolt in their deck, which is an interesting number. I guess we don't know how many they had in their hand to begin with. Okay. So to play around that Lightning Bolt we have seen, we will play the Chalice of the Void first. It stops our opponent from lightning bolting in response to our reflection. If they have another Endurance here, they can flash it in. And I don't want that to happen, so we're going to attack with this Fury. And we can fire it off in our opponent's turn when we're copying it. The Fury can trade, an Endurance can trade with a Fury. So we have lethal next turn if we pop the Fury, sweep whatever's in play, and have 2 or potentially 3 double strike attackers. If we make the token in our opponent's end step. But we'll see what transpires here. A Mystic Sanctuary. What are we going to put back on top here? A Guided Passage. I also have a foil Guided Passage somewhere because I like the card so much. I used to play it a long time ago in some rug decks. Up the Beanstalk. Okay. You can probably work out what's in our opponent's hand if they cast this Guided Passage. So we lose here if our opponent has Borrower into exactly Lightning Bolt out of their 4 cards. How many Borrowers do we see in their deck? Just the 1? Am I willing to bet they just have 1 Borrower? I think so. I'm willing to take those odds. Let's have a Fury. Right, they're going to bounce our Fury. That's pretty good. Chrome Mox. This allows us to play Broadside Bombardiers, copy Broadside Bombardiers, and swing for 4, and then blast our opponent for 10. That sounds pretty reasonable. And we'll imprint this Blood Moon. Let's play Broadside Bombardiers. So it did have a second borrower. They don't have green mana up to cast an Endurance. If they Force of Will here, then we have to pitch cast as Fury and kill the borrower, but then we do get to crash for a bunch as well. Okay. Up the Beanstalk can do some stuff. So there is a problem here, in that they have another Brazen Borrower they're trying to throw at us. I think our opponent has us here. We need to make a mistake. Yeah, I think they've got us. Maybe we should hit this borrower. I don't believe our opponent's going to make a mistake here, and they should just have us with this borrower that's waiting in the wings. But sometimes people forget about their exile zones. Our opponent did not forget about their exile zones. Yeah, we could have played that game better, I think. There was a few issues where we could have sequenced things a little bit differently. And I think we picked poorly for the guided passage turn. Alright, to the sideboard. Our opponent's deck is pretty weird looking. What actually looks good here? Like, I think our deck is just should be good into this. I think I'd rather have Scarab Swarm over on Licensed Hearse. Brother's End doesn't seem amazing. Do I want Chalice of the Voids or do I want Pyroblasts? I think Chalice of the Void is just better than having the Pyroblast still, and we're just going to roll in again like this. Alright, my internet died while sideboarding. So hopefully we're kind of back now. I'm trying to tether off my phone, so it might be a little bit slower than normal. And some of the cards may look a little bit like this. So what does this hand do? This hand makes a turn 1 Rabblemaster, or we can try for a turn 2 Ring. I don't think this is that exciting. We could go like Chalice, City of Traitors Chalice. That doesn't feel amazing. We could go Shatterskull, Simian Spirit Guide, Chalice, turn 2 Rabblemaster. That feels okay. That feels good enough to keep. We don't have the most amount of time on the round either. So we're going to have to do our best. So the plan is play this, pay 3 life, this Chalice on 1. I'm sorry that things don't look particularly pretty right now on my screen. Volcanic Island from our opponent. We can F6 our opponent's turn as well. Up the Beanstalk imprinted under the Chrome Mox. We're going to see an Up the Beanstalk. We are. Okay. Okay, some of the card images are beginning to load now. License says that's not what I'm about here. I'm all about getting Goblin Rabblemaster into play and hoping our opponent doesn't have a Force of Will. Alright, we're in. We get to bash. We've got a pretty speedy clock on the go here. We need to win 2 games in 6 minutes and 49 seconds. A Fury. That's not ideal for us. They've also showed us a Meltdown, which can take out this Chalice as well. Obviously, that's what they've pictured the Fury, but they're probably going to have more copies of them. So we're going to lose both of our friends. We need a land to drop this One Ring. A Blood Moon. We can shut our opponent off with blue mana. That takes us further away from the One Ring, though. But I think we do have to do this. And just get some F6 value. We're definitely going to time out before our opponent's another Force of Will. Alright, this means that if we find another land, our One Ring is way more likely to resolve. We've got rid of half of our opponent's Force of Wills, but they still have Force of Negations in their deck as they showed us. They've also shown us the Hull Breacher, which is kind of a bit of a problem with our One Ring. Right, let's make the One Ring a Force of Negation. Okay. We're in a similar spot again. If we can find a land, we can play the One Ring, start drawing some cards. Okay, our opponent didn't have any players of their own, which means they got 3 cards that do things. Let's see if we can try this One Ring again. Hull Breacher is definitely a thing our opponent can have. If we draw now, we realistically can't find anything. So if our opponent wants to flash in a Hull Breacher, we can draw in response. If they don't have a Hull Breacher, then we get to draw some cards. But we can at least waste their mana for that turn. And stop them getting mana on their main phase here. If we tap this and they get a treasure taken from a Hull Breacher, that's unfortunate. But it's much better timing this way. You got a Hull Breacher, opponent. They do not. Alright. Now we are cooking. Give me something better than this, I guess. 1, 2. This will come in tapped. So that's not very helpful. We need to dither a little bit less as well because we don't have the most amount of time on the clock. I don't want to waste any life into my Ancient Tomb here to play an Unlicensed Hearse. I don't think this game is going to be about the Unlicensed Hearse. And the less life we spend on frivolous things like Unlicensed Hearse, the more life we have to spend on the One Ring. 5 mana we're going to see here. Leyline revealed. Our opponent wants a lot of cards. They're just fully gassed up over there. We'll draw some cards with the One Ring, and hopefully that'll get us towards where we need to be. Canoptek Scarab Swarm. It's not amazing right now. Blood Moon can shut our opponent off of blue. Just worrying about our life total here. We don't really have the time to make these decisions, do we? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you go red, red. I think we cast this Chrome Mox. My computer's also being a touch on the laggy side. Not surprising, given that it had a bit of a shock with the internet and is now on a much worse connection. So done with this, and then we'll pass. Again, I'm not playing out this Unlicensed Hearse. So our opponent has shown us they have Furies in their deck. I think we're about to see one. There it is. Okay, the One Ring is taking a big bite out of our life total again. And we're going to take some more cards here, because we can throw this in a second. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's play this Fury. Okay, we're going to hit their guy here. And then we need this Broadside Bombardiers to resolve. The other thing resolved, so maybe this will be fine too. And this will throw the One Ring at our opponent for 6. If this doesn't resolve, we lose to our own Ancient Tomb. Sacrifice the One Ring here. And then we can have 6. This will put our opponent to 10. Alright, they're cycling their Leyline revealed. We get one more Ancient Tomb activation if we want it. We didn't play a land out actually, did we? But I've already F6'd, and we're just going to take that value on the clock here. We have lethal damage next turn between these two creatures. Another Fury from our opponent is definitely annoying. Up the Beanstalk. I think we can win a game in 2 minutes. I think anything below 2 minutes is going to be very hard for us to win. A Murktide Regent. So we can hit our opponent for 9. Something like a Rabblemaster here would give us that extra point damage. There it is. So we block this, we fling at them for 7. This is 8, 9, this is 10. Alright, we managed to get that one. We've got 2 minutes 45. I think we can win in that amount of time. Don't want to change anything here. I don't think so. And we just go back in and see if we can get there. I think if we'd have played the first game better, we might not be in this situation in the first place. Although I'm not sure what creature we were supposed to give our opponent. But I think if giving them the Chrome Mox was a mistake when we did the Guided Passage. So we want to keep a really fast hand. Just, you know, try and Rabblemaster our opponent out, or lock them out of Blood Moon. Play whatever, get lots of F6 value. We don't have to go through much priority here. We can probably take out some stops as well. To save us a few seconds. But I believe we can do this in 2 minutes 45 seconds. Okay, we have to mulligan. This one doesn't play. This one doesn't play either. We'll keep this one. So what's going back? So we want land, land, this. So we're getting rid of 2 Shatterskull Smashings, I think. We don't have time to mess with that. We can F6 for our opponent's turn. We can take out these stops. Actually, we don't need to take out the stops, really. Just get this Chalice of the Void for 1. Fable's got some triggers that we're going to have to click through, which is going to be a bit of a pain. We remove our own upkeep stop. Our hand is pretty decent, to be honest. Right, Leyline revealed. So our opponent can make some spooky 3-drops. So we'll play this Den of the Bugbear. Fable going, I think. Right, we're having a little bit of connection issues there again. It's just going to be a hard cast, force of negation. Okay, they're going to Petty Theft to Chalice. Sure, be my guest. Just going to be a Brainstorm looking for a counterspell. Oh, Hydroblast. Okay, that's a shame. So they've got a threat they can beat down with. We can play some Chalices and fling them at stuff. Play this out. This for 0. Cast this guy. Let's go attacks. Our opponent can't really play this Brazen Borrow in the end step without dying. Alright. Just throw this at our opponent. Get some damage. Now they can play the Borrow if they want. I think we just have to go face and hope that we can get it in time. 40 seconds is not a long time. But it's an added extra sense of danger for us. I think if we had like 3 minutes more on the clock, that'd be good. Like, we might still just lose this game because our opponent has better stuff than us and they win the game rather than us timing out. But it's going to be pretty down to the wire. Opponent's gone to 14 off of this fetch land. Okay, they've got a full spread of basics over there. We're going to see Minsk and Boo. No, we're going to see a Fury. Yeah, that's pretty devastating. If we draw a land, we can cast our own Fury and sweep their board. And that's very good. If we don't draw a land, then we take 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we have to hold out here for a land off the top. So we take 6, 7, 8, 9. If we cast this, 10, 11. Oh, that's lethal, actually, isn't it? Okay, I think we just have to hold out for a land. I guess we can't even cast this now, can we? Yeah, I think we will actually just lose this game fair and square, which is nice. I'd rather do that than lose to timing out. If I was dithering and I lost to timeout, fair enough. But if it's just my internet going down, it's a little bit. We should have pitched this and just killed both these guys. That would have saved us a whole bunch of life that we now don't have to work with, and it shuts off our Ancient Tomb. Whereas we could have like drawn another 3-drop. It was just an error from us because we're playing massively under the gun of time. Just a Lauren revealed, gassing back up. I think it is. Oh no, it's a Murktide. Big Mercs. Right, even if we did do that, I don't think we're winning that one. Alright. Nope. We lose that one fair and square. We were playing less ideally. Yeah, less ideally than I would have liked to have played that one. Anyway, so we finished with the 3-2, which is an okay record. I think we probably should have done a lot better in that last round. I made a little bit of slip up, and then we were just so under the gun with the time that we couldn't make the ideal plays necessarily, although I think it would have been close even if we did make the ideal play of pitching off that Fury, because then we still need to deal with the Murktide, but then we take 4 instead of 12. Instead of 9, and if our opponent has a counter spell, we lose anyway. So I think we were probably losing that one, but things could have gone a little bit differently on that. So how do I feel about this deck? Well, the Unlicensed Hearse here is sadly quite good in the meta, to the point where I think having 4 Unlicensed Hearse for Chalice of the Void as your 2-drop slot is correct. I wish that wasn't the case, but I think it really is where we're at. I don't particularly like the Gemstone Caverns in this deck very much. I think that could just be another mountain because we want to have red sources. We were scrimping for red sources a little bit from time to time. I do understand the attraction of the Gemstone Cavern when we're trying to ramp stuff out, but I think I'd be okay with this being a mountain. Or even another Sokenzan type card, but I think mountain is probably just where I would want to be. This does feel like one of the better builds of Mono Red that I've played though. Like the One Ring is just a very nice thing that you can follow up with all these things, because we spend a lot of cards to get stuff done. You know, we've got Simian Spirit Guides, we've got Chrome Moxes, you know, we're pitching cards to Fury or whatever to try and set up. So having the thing that just says, okay, we can gas back up now that we've locked you down, we can put the game to bed, that seems like a really good innovation that people are sort of getting on with. I don't really think there's a great deal to say about this deck. It does exactly what it says on the tin, really. We are suppressing our opponent's ability to play the game through these powerful permanents, and then we're putting big clock-in damage going on. And nowadays, Unlicensed Hearse is one of these strategy suppression things. If you wanted to have some Trinispheres in the board to help with matchups like the Storm, I could understand. I don't necessarily think that's where you want to be. Like, Mindbreak Trap does a similar thing in that front. And I think you just pick your poison, really. I think Mindbreak Trap can get your opponent more, but I don't really like Mindbreak Trap that much. It's good against the opponent's hands that just do the turn 1 thing, but quite often you're going to get jammed up by a Thoughtseize, because they're going to want Thoughtseizes against you if they're on the play, and that's where the Mindbreak Trap is going to shine best anyway. I think it's kind of much of a muchness with that in Trinisphere. People who play this deck more than me will have some more insight into what the case is there. I suppose Trinisphere might be a thing we might not even be able to play till turn 2 sometimes, whereas Mindbreak Trap is turn 0. So yeah, I do understand the attraction. I'm curious about the Red Blasts. It never felt like it was something we wanted to bring in, because we'd always be prioritising our Chalice of the Voids in a lot of blue matchups to shut off cantrips. So that is something to think about. I suppose in matchups where you want to have Chalice on 0, you can bring in the Red Blasts, so you can hit things like Echo of Eons, if that's the way you want to play that one. That makes some sense too. But yeah, if you want to play an Ancient Tomb deck, I think this is one of the best at the moment, for sure. Like, it's very solid, reliable, and if you put in a little bit of work and you learn the curve on it, in terms of like the learning curve, you can get paid out quite nicely on it. I don't think the learning curve is as deep as some other decks, but it's quite steep to begin with in terms of learning your mulligans, your sideboarding, and your sequencing. But once you get that down, you can have quite a lot of success with it, and the deck is clearly solid. It just won the Legacy Qualifier. And I do like just having the 3-drop slot. For a while, people were running like Chaos of Chaos Adventure, which is obviously a powerful card, but it's quite often a liability in some matchups. And the One Ring is just a better card for what we want to do here. It just pulls us ahead. And just having this thick density of 3 drops when we've got 8 soul lands and then 8 pieces of fast mana. Just makes perfect sense to me. And I do like Fury. Yes, it can be a little bit awkward with reanimation decks, but we have 4 Unlicensed Thirst to counteract that. So I like the deck building here, and I can see why it took down the tournament. And if you want to play some Mono-Red Prison, or Stompy, or halfway between, whatever you'd like to call this, this is probably where I'd start as a deck list. It seems like a pretty solid one. Play it, tune it to your own particular preferences, and give your opponent some miserable times. Alright, thank you so much for watching this one. Sorry about the last round with the internet dipping and stuff. If it was any consolation, it annoyed me a lot more than it's annoyed you. Alright, once again, thank you so much for watching. I really do find it amazing when the old subscriber count keeps ticking up and you lovely people are getting into Legacy. And I really hope that this is encouraging you to play Legacy. It is a good format. Grief is pretty annoying in the format right now, but it's about to change in like a week or two anyway, because in Modern Horizons and things are going to change dramatically. And it will all even out in the end, I imagine. Alright, cheers for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.